rebuild or the favorites. We here for the latest. South side or the north side, not tuned to the greatest. Home team for the home teams. Both sides got our own rings. On the mound or the long ball, but we don't put the wrong strings. Yeah. It's that time of the year now. Wrigley or guarantees for the whole league that we hear now. New show with a new mood. Discussions and interviews. Trade rumors that might be. This is Pinwheels and Knife.
Hello and welcome to the Pinwheels and Ivy podcast. This is the Pinwheels pregame show, bringing you White Sox talk every Wednesday in the 12 o'clock hour, or most Wednesdays, I should say. We did take the holidays off. We were slacking a little bit, but, it's the White Sox after all. There's only so much to talk about. That's not the case today. We have some breaking news minutes before going on the show. Very exciting. I know the White Sox don't make many big moves, but we got a big one today. Well, I mean, not really a big one, but we got a move. So that's exciting. The White Sox, according to FanSided Robert Murray, are signing free agent pitcher Martin Perez. They're in agreement with for a contract. Details of that contract yet to be released. It's pending a physical still, but regardless, I still think that's a pretty solid pickup for the White Sox. I'd imagine it's just going to be a one-year deal, but this is another guy that can compete for a spot in a rotation. Now, he only made 10 starts last year through just over 50 innings. In fact, we can pull up his numbers here as well, but pretty respectable season. This guy's he's a seasoned vet. He's got over 10 years of experience, 13 years in the MLB. That's included an all-star appearance back as recently as 2022 when he was with the Texas Rangers. He posted a 2.89 ERA that season. I remember watching him pitch against the White Sox that season, actually. Won the World Series with them that year. So championship experience. Left-hander, another left-hander to add to the rotation. He's coming off a season where he had a 4.53 ERA, so obviously not great, but for the White Sox standards, we'll take that. That's right in line to about where we're going to be at. And you got another innings eater. So last year he only pitched in 10 games. All of those were starts. In fact, most of his career, he has been a starter. The last time he threw some significant innings in the bullpen came in 2023, where he had 35 appearances and only 15 of those did come out of the bullpen. But for the most part, this guy has been a starter. And I know Chris Getz was talking earlier in the offseason about how they wanted to add at least one more veteran starter. I think this is the guy. He's probably going to have a leg up on your Bryce Wilsons or some of the other veterans that they've brought in to compete for that position. But so you have some stability there for a bullpen that is a bit there's a lot of question marks. You don't really want to put a lot of stress on that bullpen. We talked last week about how bad this bullpen was last year. They had the third worst ERA in the major leagues. They blew a ton of saves, more saves than any team in the league. So you really don't want to be taxing them with extra innings. And with Perez, you're going to be getting an innings eater. Last year, he threw 135 innings. He pitched with 3 different teams. So, he's been around. He's been around the league. Look, it's not the most exciting news, but I almost compare this one a lot to, the Ivan Nova signing. If you remember when we brought him in, and he actually exceeded expectations. I really liked Nova when he was with the White Sox, but I feel like Perez is going to be similar. This is a guy that's had some past success. I think you're going to get a couple really quality starts out of him. He's going to get roughed up a couple times, but overall, you're getting a guy that's just going to be a workhorse for this team and can provide some more stability, which I'm all for. I think, you look at a lot of people complaining, and we'll get into this with some of these other signings because there's a couple different moves the White Sox have made this past week that we didn't get a chance to talk about last week. But I think when you're bringing in some veterans like this, it's going to take a lot of the pressure off some of these younger guys. I know we all really want to see these younger guys play, and it's like, why are we bringing in these young guys? Why are we bringing in veterans that are seemingly blocking the prospects we have, right? We got Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith in the farm system. They're not expected to start the year with the White Sox, but you'd expect them to be up at some point. And meanwhile, you already got Nick Nastrini, who's going to be competing for a spot in the rotation. Davis is going to be competing for a spot in the rotation. Well, he's probably going to have a spot in the rotation. But there's a lot of guys. Thorpe, another one. A lot of guys competing for not very many spots. We mentioned Wilson earlier. He talked last week how he wants to really be a starter too. So competition breeds excellence. Now that window to be that 5th starter just got a little bit tighter. And at the very least, I think Perez is a good clubhouse. He knows what it takes to win. gonna set good habits. He's been an all-star. He knows what it takes to be successful in this league. So I do think it's not a flashy pickup. It's not the sexiest move, but I think Chris Getz did get that's a solid signing. He did say he wanted a veteran. This is that veteran. So initial reaction, I like the signing. He was actually pretty good last year with San Diego as well. Bounced around to a couple different teams. I think he played on 3 different teams last year. But you could do a lot. You could do a lot worse than Martin Perez. Let's go over to Josh Rojas. And this is another guy that I think some people were a little puzzled by. Why we're bringing in another infielder? He's kind of a super utility guy. He can play third. He can play second, shortstop. He can play most all these positions. But it's why we're bringing in another third base type when we already have Brian Ramos, who can play third. We have Miguel Vargas, who can seemingly supposedly play third. Didn't really do a good job of it last year. But, you got these younger guys that have the potential to be a future part of the organization. And Rojas, who, let's face it, he's not. This is probably going to be a 1-year stint for him. So people are like, why are we bringing in this guy? But again, I think bringing in a veteran like that takes a lot of pressure off of these guys. With Rojas, I think he's immediately he's an upgraded infield over almost everything the White Sox had last year. Lenyn Sosa, at this point, I'm selling my Lenyn Sosa stock. We've seen what he can be. He is a quad 4 player, basically. Like the mix between the MLB and AAA, quad A guy. I think that's what he is at this point. He has a lot of pop down in AAA. We bring him up to the majors, and it kind of just evaporates. The glove has been a little shoddy as well. Now, Nicky Lopez was a Gold Glove defender, so he was pretty good last year, or Gold Glove nominated defender, I should say. So he played a pretty good second base, but I think Rojas is going to be just as good as Lopez, if not better. But I think what this really does, because if you look at what the White Sox have a lot of, especially when we're talking about these young guys, the young guys, we're pounding the table. We want to see the young guys. I've done it too. I thought Kolas should have gotten more of a look last year before we completely sell our stock. Now I think there's no point in playing him. It's clear that he's not part of the future, so no point in playing him either. But a lot of the White Sox prospects are pitchers. It's a lot of pitchers. We mentioned Hagen Smith, Thor. They got a lot of guys that they brought from the Cease trade, the Crochet trade. A lot of your assets that you brought in, well, I shouldn't say the Crochet, but from the Cease trade and just through the draft, a lot of the assets you brought in are pitchers. They really wanted to improve the defense last year. It did not improve. It improved marginally. It still was not very good. The overall numbers were ugly. So if you're trying to build these pitchers' confidence and you're trying to develop them properly, and I think this was the problem with Dylan Cease too, is because you'd watch Dylan Cease pitch. What was the biggest issue? The thing that always stood out to me with Dylan Cease was he'd constantly be nibbling around the corners. He'd get ahead of hitters 0-2, and then he'd feel the need that he had to strike him out. And that would get him into trouble. Next thing you know, an 0-2 count would become a 3-2 count. He's throwing way more pitches than he needs to. So even if he does get that strikeout and doesn't walk him, which he would walk a lot of these guys that he had up 0-2, the pitch count's getting jacked up. He's out by the 5th inning. But that was because he didn't trust the defense behind him. I don't want any of these young guys that they have to fall into the same bad habits. Because Chris Getz, there's a reason in that Crochet trade he was targeting position players, is because they don't have a whole lot of them in this farm system. Now, you're going to have Colson Montgomery coming up, so these position players are important. It's going to be important to get them time. But if they want to give them a few extra, most of the guys that are ready, that you're going to be watching, especially early in the season, for the young player standpoint that have a future with this team, is going to be on the pitching side. So I think having a stable defense and Rojas is going to help stabilize that infield defense is very beneficial. You're also not going to have to, yes, you're going to be developing guys at the major league level, but not at the extent you had to last year. I think there's nothing wrong with having veterans in there that can kind of help with that workload. So these guys aren't pressing. Because I think especially offensively last year, where a lot of these young guys struggled, is they'd get in there, they were struggling, and so they'd start pressing because no one else around them was helping. There's not a whole lot of lineup protection. So they're all pressing, and then the struggles just keep rolling downhill because it gets more frustrating. As a hitter, you're trying to do too much up there. And as a young player, another way you can develop a lot of bad habits. So again, with Rojas, not the flashiest signing, 31-year-old, you got non-tendered by Seattle, but you could do a lot worse. I mean, even looking at, we'll pull up his numbers here. Let's see if I can. I had him up for a second ago, but he. Average hitter, so here, let's see if I can pull this thing up. Make sure we're getting our facts right on this show. I don't be saying numbers off the top of my head. Okay, so White Sox, again, this is another guy too. Rojas also follows kind of like their strategy this offseason with a lot of the position players they've targeted where they get on base. We mentioned Slater, high on base percentage. Talkman walks a lot. Rojas, another guy that has over a 10% walk rate. So this is obvious for Getz. This team had a team OBP last year of 278. So that was clearly an issue for them. So a little history on Rojas. He was a piece in that Paul Sewald trade with Arizona in 2023. And he had a really good season after getting traded to the Mariners in that trade. He slashed 272, 321, 400 with a 105 WRC plus down the stretch with the Mariners there. So that was pretty good. There is some good offensive numbers to lean back on. Start of the 2023 season, he had 8 outs above average at second base, 6 outs above average at third base. So not only is he a versatile defender, he plays both of those positions pretty well. Even in the outfield he's not primarily an outfielder, but if you need a right fielder in a pinch, he still had a +2 defensive run saved in the outfield. So he's slightly above average outfielder overall. So the guy can play a lot of positions. He plays a lot of different positions well. He can give you some offense when he gets hot in stretches. So Rojas, stamp of approval on that move as well. Not going to be a future of the team. Not exciting, but, we'll take it. We'll take it. I get where they're coming from. Final guy, I should say, I want to talk about is Bobby Dalbec. Just wrote a piece at sportsmockery.com on this signing because this one was very, very interesting. When that signing first got announced, I was like, boy, they really want their AAA team to make a run because that is what Bobby Dalbec is at this point. If you've watched any Dalbec over the last 3 seasons, he does not look like a major league player. Simply put, like it is ugly. And he has the chance now to make nearly $2 million with the White Sox. This guy's agent is phenomenal. He is a CAA sports client. He signed a minor league deal with the White Sox. But if he makes the majors, if he cracks the MLB roster, he's going to make $1.25 million. And then there's an extra $500,000 in incentives built into that contract. This is a really smart move for both sides. Dalbec is not worth anywhere near $2 million as a player. But put that in perspective. If he reaches his full incentives, that's going to be kind of online with what Amed Rosario just signed this week with the Nationals. He just signed for $2 million. I'm going to compare their slash lines. Now, Dalbec's 1.75 if he gets all of the contract incentives. So this is an extra $25,000 for Rosario. The last season with the Nationals, he slashed 280, 306, 380. Dalbec last year with the Red Sox, a little bit smaller sample size because he only had 93 plate appearances before he got sent down, but he slashed 133, 217, 193. The last 3 seasons, he has just 14 home runs. So it's been, and that includes 2024, 2023. He's had 1 home run in each of those seasons. So the fact that he has a chance to make close to $2 million this year, props to his agent. But for the White Sox, it makes a lot of sense too, because this is a pretty low risk move. You lost Gavin Sheets, so you need a backup first baseman. Dalbec can be that guy. I think Vaughn's pretty firmly entrenched as the starter at first base for the season. Now, if Dalbec plays really well and earns some of these contract incentives, then the White Sox are going to be happy because, A, that means he's playing well. And B, now we can try and flip him at the deadline. So that's great for them. If he doesn't pan out, doesn't really cost him anything. It was a minor league deal. There's an opt-out in his contract where if he's not on the MLB roster by June or July, he can say, I'm opting out of this contract. The White Sox can say, kick rocks. You weren't really helping us anyway. Maybe he was helping Charlotte win the championship. Who knows? But then you got another veteran that's been in the league a little bit down in Charlotte too. That's going to be helping some of these young guys early on in that season. And he also is out of options. So it's going to be tough for him to even meet a lot of those incentives just because he has to stay on the MLB roster. They can't be sending him down and back up, back and forth like that. So I think the White Sox are smart in this too. Well, yes, 1.75 would be a lot to pay. In theory, chances are it doesn't even get to that point because he's not going to be on the roster long enough to meet all of his incentives. But if he does kind of reach his potential, the White Sox are banking on because he has shown flashes, this could be a really good diamond in the rough. And now they're banking on his 2021 season. This guy was a Dalbec was a top 100 prospect in 2020, 2021. He makes his debut, 2020 and 2021. Made his debut late in 2020. Had a pretty good start to that season. He hit 23 games, 8 homers, 16 RBIs. That's pretty good. First full season with the Red Sox, that batting average dropped down to 240. But power-wise, excellent year. 25 homers. He had a career high 100 hits, 78 RBIs, and he was hitting the ball really hard. His expecting sluggage percentage was .522 with an average exit velocity of 92.4 miles an hour, and he had a hard hit percentage just over 48%. All of those numbers ranked in the top 15 percentile in the MLB. So Red Sox and the fans were really high on Dalbec at the time. Since then, it's been a disaster. He's really struggled to hit the ball hard. And he, unlike a lot of these other signings, like the Rojas that we were talking about, where they're targeting guys that get on base, Dalbec, at least in the majors, does not get on base. He's got a below average walk rate, a strikeout rate north of 34 for his career, which is well above the major league average. It's been ugly for him at the MLB level. He's really struggled. But if the White Sox are hoping, hey, change of scenery, you're going to be in another hitter-friendly ballpark with the White Sox. He's getting an opportunity to make close to $2 million and an opportunity to simply get playing time, which is something that not a whole lot of other MLB clubs would have afforded this guy. And again, a lot like Perez that we were talking about earlier, is going to bring another guy in the room, and what's suddenly becoming a pretty crowded room of first basemen and maybe like an outfielders or just positional players in general trying to get that last bench spot. Competition breeds excellence. So I don't think we're going to see any excellence on the diamond at 35th and Shields this year, but we're building. We're building towards that process. So I like the risk. I think for both sides, it's smart. Dalbec, you're getting an opportunity you wouldn't otherwise get, and you have a chance to be really overpaid based off of your production for the last year if you can meet all those incentives. For the White Sox, hey, low risk gamble. They hope they have to pay him that money because that means he's playing well, and they can flip him for prospects that will be useful down the road. So all three of these past week, I see what Getz is doing. I see what he's doing. They're not exciting, but I see the vision. It's going to be a digestible 110-loss season where they're playing good fundamental baseball. A lot to look forward to this year, baby. Can't wait. That's all we have for you. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next Wednesday around the noon hour. Make sure you check out Sports Mockery, sportsmockery.com. You can read about all of these signings. We also have an episode from last week on YouTube where we talk about the White Sox are probably been replaced by the Bears, the most embarrassing team in Chicago. The Bears salvaged a little bit of their pride by winning, but that was in 2025. We're talking about this past year in 2024. But we do have a breakdown of that and an experience at one of the oddest football games I've ever been to. So check that out on our YouTube at Sports Mockery. Throw us a like, subscribe, all of that. I think I covered all the plugs that I need to. But that's all we got for you. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your week.